white for a long time.
Okay.
Or, you know, it manifested itself in me, like, then I, like, embraced the hood in a way that was stupid and didn't serve me. And I ended up with a drug dealer for 6 years.
Okay.
But that was also not having a father, you know, and I wanted that male figure. And I needed somebody to love me. I felt so alone, you know. And he loved me when I needed to be loved, you know. And that was a very abusive relationship, you know. And I finally left it after I graduated from college. And I had this life ahead of me that I was like, you don't fit in here, and this isn't serving me, and you're not serving me, and you have put me through so many changes, and I've let you do these things to me. So who am I? How do you fit in? You don't. This is over. But that caused me to, you know, close my heart for so long. You know, that's a bluebird.
Can I just ask you a question? And I think this is also very important for young women to know. When you identify the fact that you are in an abusive relationship, because unfortunately a lot of women are, but they accept it as that's just the way it is. But when you identify it and you're aware, how do you get the courage and the strength to remove yourself from the situation so that you can empower yourself and move on with your life in a positive way?
Well, I mean, I was in an abusive relationship again, and with my daughter's father. You know, that was a very abusive relationship. You know, emotionally, mentally. You know, it got physical. And I empowered myself through my writing. You know, but it was something I've always done. With writing, I've always taken my power back. As a kid, that's how I took my power back. Because even as a kid, I was, you know, girls are not supposed to do that. You know, especially in like Latino household.
There's a lot of those. A lot of those rules. We're not supposed to do a lot of things.
Exactly. But on paper, I could be all these things that I couldn't be in real life.
Yeah.
You know, and that's how I empowered myself through my writing and writing my first book and looking at my little girl and realizing I can't raise her in this.
Yep.
You know, and that was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do because I never wanted to be a single parent. You know, like, thank God he's in her life. But that whole idea that, oh, you know, she don't need a daddy or he don't need a daddy, you know, she got me. Yes, they do need two parents. He may be whatever he may be.
But at the end of the day,
if I deny her her father, la que sufre, the one that's going to go through it and be affected by that for the rest of her life is my daughter.
Exactly.
You know, this is not about me. This is not about pride or, you know, this is about what's right for my kid. So, you know, writing my first book, I remember writing the last line and just tears. I just started bawling. One, because as a writer, you mourn something. When you finish a novel, you mourn it because it has been such a big part of who you were for however long you were writing it, even before you were writing it, building up to that. You know, there's a mourning in it once it's complete. But I also knew then and there that I had to leave him. And I wasn't crying over him. You know, it is what it is. I wasn't crying over him. I was crying over my daughter. You know, but I had to. And I've never looked back. And it was one of the bravest and smartest things I've ever done, leaving that relationship and saying that's it. No. So that's how I did it. That was my strength. But everybody has it. But it's different for everybody.
But so many people, I think, just don't realize they have it or don't know how to find it within themselves to do that.
But there's also, like, even our families, like, you know, my family, you know, you have to work it out for Vajalise. You know, they kept doing that. And I was just like, no, I'm not working it out. It's not going to work. This man is vile. And, you know, he doesn't know how to love me. And if this is love, I don't want it. You know, I will better serve this little girl by leaving this relationship. And I'll better serve myself by leaving. And it was the right thing to do. Without a doubt, the right thing to do.
I definitely commend you for that. And I respect you for that more than anything because a lot of people are mothers, but they, whether it's consciously or an unconscious thing, subconscious thing, they wind up using their kids as pawns.
Yeah.
And they wind up thinking that the way to get back at, you know, the father usually, is what I've seen in the experience of what I've been exposed to,
Yeah.
is the way to get back at him and to hurt him. And at the end of the day, it's exactly what you said.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, the one who suffers the most, hands down, no competition, is a kid.
Yep.
Period. The end. That's just the way it goes. Whether it's a daughter or a son, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And so for you to just, you know, realize that, which again, in my experience, most people that I've known in that situation have wound up using their kid as a pawn.
Well,
and it's very heartbreaking.
Yeah, and that is heartbreaking because ultimately, like I said, the one that suffers is the kid.
Yeah.
I remember one time I got into my daughter's father and I got into this big argument over, I mean, that's how, I don't even remember what it was. That's how frivolous sometimes it is. You can get into these, like, you know, I've just learned not to engage. I'm just like, all right. You know, like I told you earlier, if that's what it takes to protect myself from receiving that venom, then that's what I'm going to do. Yeah, click.
Exactly.
So, it was ugly. And it was his weekend that weekend, like a few days later, and I didn't get a call from him. And I called him like, are you going to come get the baby? And he was like, oh, can I? And I was like, what do you mean, can you? He was like, no, I thought because, you know, we had an argument that... And I was like, yo, what happens between me and you is between me and you.
Exactly.
I will never deny you your daughter.
Exactly.
As long as I know that Veja is safe with you.
Yes.
And you're not trying to kill her spirit.
Yes.
And you're letting her be her fabulous self, then we're good.
Yes, exactly.
What happens between me and you is me and you. Veja has nothing to do with it.
Exactly.
You know, he came and got her. And I remember he looked at me, he was like, thank you. I was like, you're her father.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you're right. That's terrible when people use their children as pawns.
Yes.
You know.
You're just like a fascinating person. I don't even know what else to talk about right now. I don't know if you want to talk about. There's a couple of things that are out there that you know. There's the Loba series. There's your first book. There's your novel coming up. There's the memoirs that are going to be up and coming next year. There's your Webby Award. Yeah. There's the book Do Something for children, young activists.
Yeah.
So, oh my God. I mean, do you want to give us a little your perspective and I don't know whatever it is that you want to talk about any of those things, all of those things?
Yeah. One, it's always weird to hear a list of the things that you do.
Well, that list is going to keep growing. We know this.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to keep doing this. There's no, like I told you earlier, I can't imagine not doing this.
Yeah.
I've just realized one of my roles in this life is to, work with young people, to write, to perform. But Paulo Coelho in The Alchemist said, as you evolve, your personal legend evolves with you. For the Do Something workbook, it's a practical guide for young social activists. Because often we tell our kids, if you see something that you don't like, take it upon yourself and you change it. But we don't give them the tools to do that.
Exactly.
And I was presented with this opportunity to co-write this book with my coworker at the time, Julia Steers. We were both editors for the website, and I never thought that I could combine my love for writing with my love for working with kids. So that book gave me that opportunity. But again, as you evolve, your personal legend evolves with you.
Yeah.
As for my second novel, I'm a fiction writer. I love writing. I've always loved writing stories. Even if I would just write them in my head. In Brooklyn, in the hood, Bushwick, Brooklyn, we had a plum tree in the backyard. And I would climb to the top of the plum tree and just sit there and close my eyes and concoct these tales in my head. So that's always been part of who I am. I just finally started putting it on paper. So fiction is one of my loves. La Loba poetry series happened because, I used to go to a lot of poetry events and it was very competitive. I don't do slams. To me, I just wanted to give people, whether they are seasoned poets or, newbies to the game, I wanted to give them the opportunity to just, bless the mic. Share your work, even if it's for a few minutes on the mic, because there's something very empowering you know, and very joyous and fulfilling about being on the mic and having people like listen to, you know, that release. You know, my first, one of my first loves was poetry, but I left it for a long time. You know, and I just came back to it maybe like 2 years ago. Is that a hawk? No.
No.
It's beautiful though.
Uh-huh.
So I do not consider myself a poet. I don't think I have earned those stripes yet. You know, I'm a fiction writer, absolutely. I'm a writer, absolutely. I would love to become a poet. So I'm working towards that. Just because I perform doesn't mean I'm a poet. You know, and I had a discussion with someone, Mike Geffner, the other day, and he was like, you know, somebody said that you're a poet once people start calling you a poet, and people call you a poet, you're a poet. I'm not a poet yet. I don't feel, I haven't earned that. So that's one of the things I want to do, you know, become a poet for myself. Because there's something about poetry that's, you know, not just beautiful, it's like to be able to put a moment in a few lines and capture that, and capture an audience with those lines that they feel you like hear, that's just beautiful. It's amazing. So I want to do that, and keep performing, you know. And that's the memoir. Again, it's my life, the craziness, the beauty, the, you know, the pain. There's been a lot of pain, but you know, you have
the triumphs.
The triumphs. You know, you have to put all of that together and make yourself. You know, and I have to put that out there. I just know that I have to write this memoir, and with that comes a one-woman show, because I'm a performer. I love to perform, and you know, it's empowering for women. It's empowering for people. It's empowering for Latinas. You know, for women of all cultures and creeds and races and nationalities. You know, especially for women, because we've been silenced for so long.
Yes.
You know, and I was silenced for so long. And I silenced myself for so long that at this point in my life, I'm not going to be quiet. You know,
we don't want you to be quiet.
It doesn't serve. It doesn't serve me. It doesn't serve my people. It doesn't serve my daughter. It doesn't serve. So that's what's in the works right now. This memoir is going to be a roller coaster. You know, Anais Nin said to write is to live life twice. And there's some things you don't want to relive. But some things you have to relive. One, to release.
Yes.
And two, because you learned lessons that you have to share. So other people can learn those lessons through you.
Agreed.
So that's good. But that's been I've been writing the memoir for 10 years. But now it's finally time to buckle down and just, you know, so.
That must be really exciting.
So yeah.
To know that you've been investing so much time and energy and honesty into something.
Well, you know, I'm a bit of a hoarder when it comes to writing and like my papers and like all my writing. Like I have 5 bins of writing.
Wow.
From over the years. And the other day I was looking for a piece and I just started going into these bins. And I found writings from like 98, 97.
Wow.
You know, and sitting there reading this stuff, at first I was just like, oh my God. I was in so much pain. And I was so hurt. And I was carrying this huge, I was like Atlas. Carrying, you know, the weight of the world, this boulder on my back. And I felt like the world owed me something.
At that time?
Yeah, at that time I did, you know. And at first it like was jarring. And then I was like, wait, look at how much you've changed. But to have that, you know, to have these writings, you know, and to see the evolution. There's something about that. And sitting there and looking at it. And I think that in a way, in a weird symbolic way, that really locked it in for me. It's like, you gotta finish this memoir, babe. You have to.
If you can, I know this might be tough, but if you could express in just no more than 3 words. I was going to say 1, but let's say no more than 3 words. What that moment felt like. The going through, revisiting, going through the emotion, and then the enlightenment. How would you describe that?
Joyful pain. Yeah, because it was painful.
Right.
But